And the way that we cling to our identification or let go of it can either obstruct the path or create an opening on it. And practice is crucial. What could we practice that would feed that spark of inspiration, of enthusiasm, of truth in us? Investigating the wonder of consciousness, the nature of mind, the miracle of the body. We'll talk with elders, lineage holders, seekers, scholars, and practitioners from diverse wisdom traditions to explore the precious convergence of the being, the psyche, and life itself, and how we can use the alchemy inherent to that meeting point for transformation. I'm Laura Carrotti, and this is the delicate business of being human. Courting the mystery, weaving the story, and bringing it all back home to the body. Today, it's just you and I. I wanted to pause the guests for just a moment so that we could see if it's possible for us to start to weave together the different threads that have presented themselves so far, so that we can start to gain a little bit of coherence in the seemingly disparate conversations that are being had. So in order to do that, the idea that I have is to speak a little bit about something really foundational, fundamental inside of all of these different conversations that we're having. And that is the idea of identification. And I'm going to expound on this quite a bit. And in order for us to look at identification, we need to look at a trajectory, which is essentially the thing that we're touching on again and again and again. A trajectory, either the trajectory of the human being, an arc, or the trajectory of the essence, the soul, the life force. And I am going to talk about how I think those two arcs are kind of the same thing. So we have looked at the psychological aspect of the being, the spiritual aspect of the being, and the thing that is underneath and looking through all of them is this idea of a path. So let's look at it from a few different angles. When we look at it from the psychological angle, like Paramita and I have been doing, we can see that there is a unity, a separation, and a rejoining. And when we look at it from the spiritual, we see the same thing. We see that there is a unified field of consciousness. That unified field of consciousness fragments. Those fragments believe themselves to be separate identities. And then those travel a pathway which brings them back to the initial state of oneness. When we look at the human pathway, it's very, very similar. So I am born from two borrowed cells that explode into expansion. A fevered multiplication of cells, which results in me. I am encased in an incubating womb, and I'm completely unaware of any differentiation between me and my host, right, which is my mother. So me and my mother are one and the same. And I grow, I expand, I grow. And even once I'm born, I really am not particularly connected to the fact that I am different from her until I meet either absence or friction or both. So either I want warmth, I want nourishment, I want connection, and it's not there, and I suffer because, oh my God, how am I here just alone? Or I want and I don't get it the way that I want, or I don't get exactly what I want. And there's a friction that gives me the jarring revelation that I am, in fact, not her. We are two. And from this two, I begin to expand into something individual. And what I find interesting is that we can get really, really, really caught up in trauma speak, right? Talking about our childhoods, talking about all the bad things that happened. And I think for me, at least, it's really helpful to look at, firstly, the definition of trauma, which is an event that my nervous system, my being, was not equipped to handle. It came too fast, it was too much. It in some way completely overwhelmed me. And I didn't have support. I didn't have a way to process it. I didn't have a way to recover. I didn't have a way to go back to a feeling of safety. And in that case, these traumas are both very individual. The way that it happens to us, it is individual. The way that it comes into our lives and affects us is individual. And we all have different degrees in different ways. But the experience is universal. And it's universal because we could also say that that experience of trauma is an experience of an encounter with an aspect of reality which we can name something like the cruelty of life or the horrors or whatever we want to call it. It is a movement from innocence into awareness that, oh my God, the people around me don't have the capacity to protect me from everything. They are not perfect. And the world is scary. And all of us would have at some moment during our development come into an encounter with that truth in one way or another. And it might have been from our parents themselves and their inability to give us the unconditional love that we thought was coming. And it could have been in an encounter with something outside of our family unit that our parents were incapable of protecting us against. And it could have been also with just a stark encounter with the reality that people die. There are many people I know that when, as a child, they learned that everyone that they know and love is going to die, and they themselves are going to die, this can be a tremendous shock and cause absolute terror in the child. Because what kind of world is this? And these are all quite middle of the road examples, nothing too horrible. But when we start to imagine that there are people born into war zones, there are people born into scenarios of tremendous abuse, of famine, of innumerable horrors, we start to recognize that there is a shock, that comes just with that realization. People can get sick, people can leave, people can die. There are wars, there are famines. Things are unjust, they're unfair. And no one, not even our parents who we project a sort of omnipotence on, can do anything about it. So I would say that we all have some sort of developmental shock that comes in when we encounter a world that doesn't seem to want to take care of us, that doesn't notice and see our specific gifts and talents, and that doesn't seem to be for us in the way that we hoped. So we start totally undifferentiated. I am my mother. We learn about separation through friction and through absence, and then we receive an impact of some sort in some way everyone does, that lets us know that life is not as safe and benign and perfect as we had hoped. It's a kind of fall from innocence. And most of our favorite fairy tales and myths and stories will start at this point, right? We all remember, anyone that's as old as me at least remembers, like when Bambi's mom gets shot by the hunter and you're like, what just happened? Look at how many fairy tales involve the loss of a beloved caretaker and the ushering off into the care of someone that doesn't love us, that doesn't look out for us. Right? This is all symbolic of that movement from innocence into reality. And then we start to understand the need to develop protection against this. And this is often done from a very young age in a very childish brain. And we think things like, if I were just good enough, if I were just perfect, nothing bad would ever happen to me. And so we try to build up these defenses that are going to keep us safe from what no one can remain safe from, namely things like death. So we move from something almost amorphous, and we start to get more robust in our structure. We start to solidify, we start to calcify, we start to become something, a person with preferences and attributes and likes and dislikes and qualities. And it all starts to get very, very dense. And it's often reinforced by the world outside of us. And it's either something good or something bad. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that we start to really firmly believe in this creature. And we start to really firmly invest in this identity, I am. And by the time we get to middle school, this goes bananas, right? We remember that. Trying to fit in, trying to find our place, trying to not be left out, trying to not be humiliated, ostracized. And this calcified gravitational suchness starts to take on its own life. It starts to respond to the stimulus outside, which encourages it to grow in some ways and it discourages it from growing in others. And by the time we're full-grown adults, we're utterly convinced in ourselves. We have lost any sense of that undifferentiated innocence. And the world, whether we're aware of it or not, is not a kind place that we can be open and relaxed in. It is a kind of war zone where we need to compete and we need to be a certain way to survive. And we go on this way for a long, long time until we reach a kind of apex. And that could be in so many different ways. It could be that I got everything I wanted. I did everything that I was supposed to do. I reached the top of the mountain with all my riches and my children and my diplomas and everything. And I go, you have my little Peggy Lee moment. And I ask, is that all there is? Or I reach the bottom. I try and I try and I try and I cannot make it work. I cannot make sense of this life. I can't make the impact I would like to make. I cannot create the relationships I would like to create. And the same thing happens. Is that all there is? And I start to feel trapped in this story, this identification that I created for myself, that I did it, and now it's asphyxiating. I can't breathe anymore. I know somewhere that there is all this life to be lived, that there is all this something in me, but I am disconnected from it. And I'm disconnected from source, and I'm disconnected from life itself. And more often than not, this is when I begin to seek. This is when I begin to try to find some kind of meaning here, find some kind of sense in it all. And then I actually move into some sort of disintegration. I start to de-identify from a story that I've been telling about myself for a long time. And this is a particularly painful moment when I realize that I'm different than what I'd like to think I am. That I can't stay where I've been, but I don't know where I'm going. And so I start to come down from this arc. And often what happens, we can look at an identification as a really limited understanding of myself. Like I took like 5 qualities and 3 attributes, and I'm like, this is me. But there's all of this more that I am. But I'm like, this is it. This is me. Yeah, I'm this. Cool. And when I find out that like it's not really like that, really, I'll usually just take this limited slice of reality and I'll pick another one and I'll do it there. And one of the places we can see this the most clearly is when people become spiritual, right? So they were drinking and smoking and eating 15 hamburgers a day and doing whatever. And now they're like, okay, that's not working. So here's what's gonna work. I'm gonna be spiritual and I'm gonna download light codes and I'm gonna speak in light languages and I'm gonna, burn incense and cleanse my crystals and do whatever. And I shun alcohol and smoking and eating meat and I break away from my old friend group, but I haven't actually expanded. I've just shifted one limited identification for another. What the moment actually calls for is expansion, and expansion is painful. Because if I occupied this much space for decades, and now I tried to open out, there's just empty space. There's just empty space. So this is about the time that I start to look for some support, either through therapy or through yoga, through meditation, through reading spiritual self-help books. We can look at, though, for example, one of the favorite tools for something like this is yoga. Somebody goes to a yoga class, and what happens? Their body that was tight, contracted, limited, only able to move within a certain range, only capable of certain movements. Suddenly you do this practice and what happens? You soften. Things get more mobile. Things get more possible. You get a wider range in the body. The body softens. The body becomes more pliant. This is why yoga can lead us in, right? Because yoga is an example. It offers us this example of what it feels like to soften, what it feels like to move out of rigidity and into fluidity in a way that doesn't feel like a free fall. I might start to meditate and my mind, which was so fixated and stuck in one set of movements and gears, I might start to notice that. So the first thing that's necessary for me to bring about any kind of change in this limitation and rigidity that feels terrible to me is first by recognizing that I'm limited. Without that, nothing moves. I have to face the stark truth and go, oh my God, like, I know there's more. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's holding back, but I have the sneaking suspicion that it's me, that I'm the one doing it, but I'm not doing it, and I don't know why I'm doing it or how I'm doing it. This is step one. And then I start to gather some tools, and I start to de-identify from what I was. And this is a long, arduous process of returning, right? The arc of solidification reaches its apex, and then the arc of disintegration can begin. And this is also the spiritual path. Guruma Dipti Rajkumar Baswara was here, and she was speaking about the trajectory of the divine, or we could call it life, or we could call it whatever we want, but it moves from unity to multiplicity and back to oneness. But this arc cannot be rushed, and people try to rush it because of the need for a new identification, because leaving my old limited identification is exceptionally painful, because at least I knew what was going on there. And let's not forget, there are the horrors. There is a reason I was protecting myself like this. And so when I arc to the top and I get too rigid to bear it anymore, this moving away from rigidity necessitates my re-encounter with what scared me so much in the first place. And so it's not an easy leap to make. And I tend then to want to preemptively understand and know. Oh yeah, I got it. We're all one. We're all one. Who has the experience of that? I mean, we can have it like when we've taken a heroic dose of mushrooms or something, or in a medicine ceremony, but who walks around in the experience of oneness? That is a really difficult to attain state. We need to move in phases. So first, I am so caught up in protecting myself. I am just in it. I only think about myself. I amass, I pull in, I hoard. And then I can start to go, why am I doing this? Like, why would I be greedy when I could be generous? Because I'm scared. Because I'm afraid. When I look around the world, I see so much hoarding. I feel that if I let go, there won't be anything left for me. Simple, right? Simple. This is not rocket science. But the feeling beneath that, and that's another arc. The arc from numbing until we get to the apex of not feeling, and then we're like, caught in our lives, ready to choke and die, and then we have to follow the arc back to feeling. Feeling is utterly essential here. I cannot move forward unless I start to feel all of that fear, all of that shame, all of that guilt, all of that pride, all of that material that propped up this individuality and that caused me to want to create it in the first place. There is something that has remained for this entire journey. There is something that has actually been untouched by our numbing and unnumbing, by our solidifying and densifying and not. This piece, which has been untouched and unchanged this entire time, is what is going to help us, guide us, complete this journey with us, is what's going to be the North Star on this journey. I need to move into that fragment of me, which is a fragment of life itself. When we talk about identification, we're talking about fragmentation of the whole into teeny tiny little slivers of glass that think they are alone and separate. And there is a functionality to this to some extent, right? If I think about, like, in May of 1975 in Queens, New York, this something arose. It was me. Laura arose. She came into being, and she had a certain set of situations around her, right? She had a socioeconomic situation, she had a political situation, she had a familial situation, she had a genetic situation, and she arose as part of a whole. You can imagine each of our arisings as a satellite sent out, or a cell in a great organism, or an eyeball, right? So this thing arises, why? To look, to learn. What is it? What is this vantage point? What does it look like from here? Because we know vantage point means everything. Vantage point changes everything. If I stand on top of the mountain, or if I go and lay myself in the grass in the valley, things look completely different. And so what if life itself were sending us all out as little impulses to gather information, take our photos, and send them back to the mothership, like the good little satellite that we are? So what happens when this individuation crystallizes is that I lose touch with that gooey center. Yeah? I lose touch with my essence, and I start to become literally just a set of defenses against the horrors. I cannot rest. I cannot trust. I must defend. I must be perfect. I must stay safe. And the tentacle of the divine, or the eyeball in space, stops doing its job. It stops the open witness of the world around it in order to defend from the world around it and protect from the world around it, which is also its job. Because life doesn't make mistakes in this way. This is not an arbitrary occurrence. This is the path. The path is to get off the path. The path is to lose the path. The path is to forget yourself. Even in Sanatana Dharma, which is the Hindu understanding of the way things are, the divine has 5 functions. The first 3 are pretty intuitive and familiar. It creates, then it sustains its creation, and then it destroys its creation. And we can see this in everything that lives. Whatever lives is born. Imagine a flower, right? It arises, it stays for some time, and then it dies, just like us. That is the way it is here. But there's one more movement that the divine makes, which I can't tell you why this movement is here, but it feels true. And that is that the divine reveals and conceals, and reveals and conceals. how many times do we lose it and find it and lose it again and find it again and lose it again and find it again? Whether it's a teaching or a truth or connection with ourselves or the love in our hearts or whatever it might be, we are in a constant in-breath, out-breath. How many times do you hear something in a discourse or learn something and go, God, I knew that. How did I forget? I knew that. When I give workshops, we move a lot, a lot, a lot. And at the end, everybody goes, oh my God, that felt so good. I forgot how good it feels to just spend the whole day moving. Remember when you used to ride bikes? You would literally ride bikes the whole day. You'd get on your bike and you'd ride it until the sun went down. Remember how good that felt? So every time we finish the workshop, people go, oh my God, that felt so good. I forgot. And then I have alumni groups where we meet once a month. And guess what? We move. And every time we get into the alumni group, people go, oh my God, I forgot. I forgot how good it feels to move. And it happens with meditation. Oh my God, I forgot how good it feels to sit on the mat. How many times do we forget to remember, forget to remember, forget to remember, forget to remember? So we forget ourselves to remember. And so this remembering is a process, just like the densification, the robust form, and this generating an individual self was a process. The undoing of that is also a process, and it has two parts. The first part is the recognition of what it is that keeps me trapped in something where I cannot breathe and I cannot fully be myself. I cannot fully express. I must recognize what it is that is holding me there if I hope to get around it. It's like trying to get out of a house, but you don't turn the lights on to find out where the doors are. So the first thing is we have to look at it, and we have to be able to be objective and go, wow, okay, I'm really trying so hard to be successful or to be beautiful or to be, whatever the thing is, yeah. And then the second thing is I need to feed that in me, which has been there the whole time, that fragment of life, that shard of the divine, needs to be fed, because that's my North Star. That's how I get home again. That's the GPS. So I need to look at what's obstructing me and feed what is the truth of me. And this is the trajectory. This is how we get home. And most of the time, in order to do that, I need a practice. I need a practice of some sort. And you'll notice here we talk about things that are not necessarily just clear spiritual or psychological things. Sometimes I have people come on talking about creativity. What is creativity? Creativity is you talking to that piece, you feeding that piece. And there is this huge tendency when we start to hear this to still keep ourselves safe. And so we learn. When I'm learning something with the mind, it's different than having the experience, right? It's like when I explain to someone what it is to fall in love, that's not the same as them letting go and falling in love. It doesn't give any of the real experience. And the same thing goes with surrender, with letting go of some of the defenses. It's beautiful and lovely on paper, but we need to let go of the defense of the mind of only learning and not doing in order to really reach. This is then the moment where I start to recognize I need a practice. So we practice how to be a person all the time. Everything that we do repetitively is a practice. So scrolling on the phone is practicing distraction. Watching Netflix is practicing a samyama, a identification with the self that's on the screen. We can do practices that feed our defenses, and we can do practices that feed our essence. So I'm remembering my mother right now. So when I was little, she used to be obsessed with Stephen King. Hopefully everyone knows who Stephen King is. He's like a very famous horror author. And he writes very scary books. And my mother used to work nights. And so I would get home from school and she would be like just settling out her day to get ready to go to work. And every day at 3 o'clock, I would come home at the same time, because it's pretty predictable, right? Like the school bell rings, you walk home, you get home essentially at the same time. And every day I used to scare the shit out of my poor mother because she would be reading a horror book and she would be so enmeshed in the field of anxiety and something terrible is going to happen and that like her 9-year-old opening the door and coming in, she would be like it would give her a heart attack because she was practicing fear. So what are we practicing and who is it serving? Is it serving our numbness? Is it serving our fear? Is it serving our expansion? Is it serving our surrender? So when we get on the yoga mat and we do a practice and we come out and the body feels coherent, when you feel the circulation moving through the whole body as one, when we feel strong and supple and capable, it can also be feeding my ego of wanting to be the perfect yogi who does the handstand and God knows what in the classes. But the idea behind it is something else, is that it reminds me of the value of suppleness, the value of letting go. When I sit on the mat and I do my meditation, I am calling for this part of myself, for this essence. I am calling for it. I am examining my mind. I am seeking for the truth. When I do a practice of expression, I am allowing for this piece to have a voice. So it doesn't really matter what we choose. It doesn't really matter what our practice is. What matters is that we remember to practice. So I can't do any of this journey. We said the first part was recognizing the identification. And the next part is the willingness and the ability to feel what is under there. Because when I look and I go, oh my God, I'm trying to be perfect. And I start to be honest with myself about why I want to be perfect. Because I'm afraid I'll be rejected. Because I'm afraid I'm unlovable. Because I'm afraid that nothing I ever do is going to be enough. Then I'm going to start to need to feel what's underneath that, holding it up, propping it up, making it be. Yeah, a feeling of inadequacy, a feeling of not being beautiful, of not being lovable, of not being good enough. And these are big, hard feelings. Again, if I do it with the mind, it's simple. If I do it with the defense mechanism of the mind, it's okay, so I'm a little afraid of that. But if I go into the feeling without numbing, if I just allow myself to feel that, that's something else. And so I need a practice of some sort. And I often need support as well. I need a practice that calls to something true in me, something real in me. And I need somewhere to lean when these feelings start to overwhelm me and become too much. I am always practicing something. We are practicing all day long. We're practicing distraction. We're practicing defending. We're so good at these things, we don't even think we're doing them. If we can get that good at defending and numbing out, we can get just as good at softening, at opening, and at feeling. And then we have the last part of this journey. The last stage is to go from the very individual, very me, to I'm going to expand my awareness to include what's around me. I'm going to soften my edges so that I can also put myself in other people's shoes. Soon, if I do it right, I can get supple enough to start to be able to withstand others who don't agree with me, who don't share my vantage point, who don't particularly enhance my life, without wanting to defend against them, eradicate them. And the more I can allow myself to expand into this, the more I can become at service to the whole from the place of my specificity. Can I be content and find my place in the whole, at service to the whole? Not because I'm supplicating my will, but because that's what I came here to do. Nature doesn't have targets for its gifts. A flower doesn't bloom for one person and not for another. The tree doesn't give shade to one person and not another. Trees just give oxygen. It's not personal. And so there's this possibility for us to become like that, to just give our gifts, not because we're going to receive something good back or because there is merit and deserving in the world, but just rather because that's what we have to do and we're going to do it, right? Not measuring out and doling out our treasures according to the merit of the receiver, but just giving freely from that expansion and from that honed capacity that we have for all that time having been spent in the contraction and in the limitation. And the thing is, life itself offers me a series of initiations which can help me to make this transition if I choose to take them. All of these different aspects of reality, the childbirth and the parenthood that stretches me open, expands my capacity, expands my heart and my ability to love and to take care. My aging that allows me to see that this one life is going, and it's going fast. So the path is psychological, it's spiritual, and it's physical. We watch our bodies do it, and our bodies, when it's time for me to transition from childhood into adulthood, there is an initiation. There's a gate. There's a crazy influx of hormones that makes me absolutely bonkers as I calibrate to this new experience. It's not particularly easeful, the transition, but it's absolutely necessary. If I want to become an adult and to contribute some way in reality, I must go through the transition of puberty. Parenthood is another. Aging is another. Death is another. Knowing that death is ahead, knowing that I will have to invariably let go of this body, this limited form, this limited identification, this little story of who I am. What would I like to contribute while I'm here, if this anyhow is going to arise and pass? Life shows us how the path is. The flower is born, it blossoms, it withers, and it is resorbed back into the soil it came from. And the way that we cling to our identification or let go of it can either obstruct the path or create an opening on it. And so again, practice is crucial. What could we practice that would feed that spark of inspiration, of enthusiasm, of truth in us? Yeah. So that's what I wanted to say on that. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. I'll see you the next time.